Thank you everybody for being here. And welcome to the Open Access Inclusive Learning Circle series. We have an aim, and that is to foster this synergy between universal design for learning, assistive technology, and augmentative and alternative communication. Today's topic is the legal obligation for the consideration of assistive technology, and we'll be talking about recent guidance from the U.S. Department of Education, and then we'll dive a bit deeper and clarify and define some different aspects of AT consideration. We're going to provide you some wonderful resources that teams can use to support them in making decisions about AT and using best practices to do so. Again, thank you for being here. A little bit about open access and our team. In case this is your first webinar with us, we like to introduce our team, and it starts with this very small but very mighty team. Troy is our executive leader of open access, and we have Leah and Lori who are coordinators, and then we've got 3 content lead specialists. We've got Emily for UDL, myself, Jill McCann for AT, and then we have Jen for AAC. And then we also have our amazing assistant Mel, who keeps everything running smoothly. A little bit about open access. We are a statewide special education resource lead with the statewide system of support, and we're grounded in that foundational belief that with access to quality instruction, all students can engage, participate, and learn within inclusive settings. What makes our project a little bit unique, or a lot unique, is that we highlight the importance of learning and participation for all through UDL, through assistive technology, and augmentative and alternative communication. Our website has many free resources for educators and administrators. So once you get to our website, be sure to bookmark that for future use. If you want to know more, we have a one-page flyer, and you can get to that. Leah and Lori, I think, are dropping in the chat a link to the home-based document, so you'll have access to that. We also offer targeted supports that include training and coaching and mentoring for schools and districts who reach out to us on a voluntary basis when they're looking to really build capacity for UDL, AT, and AAC. And so we are ready to support them on their journey. Currently, our intensive supports includes providing technical assistance to 22 LEAs throughout the state who have been identified as intensive level through the compliance and improvement monitoring process, or the SIM process, and we provide support for these districts. So we are aligning and leveraging continuous improvement work within the state system of support. And our ultimate goal is to establish showcase sites across the state to highlight inclusive practices. And we're currently collaborating with a number of districts to create those showcase sites, UDL showcase sites, and also AAC showcase sites. So that is a little bit about open access. At Open Access, we really value accessibility, and we want to make a promise to you. And we're committed to making this presentation and materials as accessible as possible. A few strategies we have today are simple backgrounds, high contrast text, offering digital and print materials. We'll offer shortened links, alternative text for images, multiple examples and non-examples, opportunities and options for participation. The resources that we are using today. So we've got 3 things. We're posting a home-based document into the chat, and it has links that you can access as we progress through the webinar. We'll also place links into the chat as they come up. Just a heads up, the home-based document is a rolling document, so it's going to include all of our past, current, and eventually future webinars so that everything's all in one place. You can always go back and revisit the document. The other thing we have on the screen here for you to see is the open access link to the website. And so that will be something that we're going to be visiting today as well. And please let us know if you aren't able to access any of these resources that we're sharing with you. We can potentially create a PDF for you if you need something like that. So let us know if you need any accommodations that way. In terms of the webinar and the Zoom that we're in, we really value your participation. And so we've got a few options available today. We're always monitoring the chat for questions and comments. We also love reactions if you want to press that reaction button. And you can also put questions into the chat as well. We may not stop right away to answer them because we've got a lot of content to cover, but we'll try to get to them as soon as we can. Alrighty, well, we are so glad to be with you here today and discuss legal considerations of AT. My name is Jill McCann, and I am the Assistive Technology Content Statewide Lead for the Open Access Project. I've been working in education coming up to about 25 years, with much of it working as an assistive technology specialist. I am truly honored to have Jessica Rosenberg co-presenting with me today as our guest. She brings such a wealth of experience and knowledge, and I'm just so excited for her to be here today. And I'll let her tell you a little bit more about herself.
Thank you, Jill. I'm really excited to be here today with you and with everyone else for our meeting. I've been working in education for 27 years in the same district, which is San Jose Unified. And I started my career as a bilingual general education teacher, and I taught third and fourth grade for 7 years. And then I transitioned into special education, and I was an RSP teacher for 10 years in two-way bilingual immersion schools. And this is my 11th year as an assistive technology specialist. And it's my fourth year working with open access trainings in our district, and all of you wonderful people that have been doing this for so long. We'd love to know who's here with us. If you haven't already, you can add your name and role and where you're from in the chat if you feel comfortable doing that. So getting started, our inclusive welcome, we're talking about designing an access for all, which is universal design. And this comic strip really kind of says it all. For those of you who aren't able to see it or read it, I'll read it out for everyone. But there's a man, just shoveling the stairs, and he says, all these other kids are waiting to use the stairs. So when I get through shoveling them off, then I'll clear the ramp for you. And then there's someone in a wheelchair who says, can you please shovel the ramp? I think I said those out of order. Woohoo! So, and then the last part is, but if you shovel the ramp, we can all get in. So eliminating or finding a solution to one problem often benefits others too. And this principle was discovered very early on when universal design was applied to architecture. So building a ramp, it not only supports someone in a wheelchair, but it also helps a mom with a stroller or a person with a bike. And similarly, closed captions can support people with hearing impairments, but it also supports people who are learning English. Or maybe like myself, I have them on when I'm watching TV shows, if there's a lot of noise in the background or maybe heavy accents. So when we're considering each individual student's needs, it's important to recognize the biases we may carry. So do you believe access should be available to everyone, regardless of ability? So access is more than just physical, it's a mindset. So in one of my UDL AT professional development sessions, we reviewed this specific comic, and someone stated that only students who actually need the ramp should use it. So this person truly believed that if students can climb the chairs, they should, even if it's more difficult for them than others. So then the question came up is, how do we actually know and determine who can use the ramp? So many challenges, whether they're physical, cognitive, emotional, are invisible to the naked eye. So should we really force everyone to take the stairs when we may not fully understand their needs? So universal design encourages us to provide options for all because we don't always know the extent of someone's challenges. So offering that accessible solutions from the start can benefit everyone. not just those who we can visually see need it. And the big question is, that happens as we're out in the field is depending on your mindset, I ask, should we limit access when we don't truly understand the range of difficulties individuals may face? So I think all of us need to I believe very much in UDL and providing that before for everyone to use and have the actual learner decide whether it benefits them instead of us deciding for them. So here's our path today. The topics we're going to be covering will begin with definitions related to assistive technology, followed by myths and facts about the legal mandate surrounding AT, as well as how to document AT in the IEP. And then next, we'll explain AT consideration and introduce tools that teams can use to ensure a consistent team-based approach to this legal requirement. And finally, we'll share resources to support successful AT implementation, promote learner agency with their AT, and offer guidance on managing AT during transitions. So let's get started. Take it away, Jill.
All right. So we are going to dive in first with some definitions about assistive technology so that we're all on the same page. For those of you who are on the Zoom who are familiar with assistive technology, you'll be familiar with some of these, but we want to just have this as a baseline. So we'll start with some legal definitions. So this is the official definition of AT that comes from IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Act. An AT device means any item, piece of equipment, product, or system, whether acquired commercially, off the shelf, modified, customized, that is used to create, maintain, or improve functional capabilities of an infant, toddler, or child with a disability. That encompasses quite a lot. AT service means any service that's directly assisting an infant, toddler, or child with a disability in the selection, acquisition, or use of that AT device. And there's a lot that goes into that as well. So the evaluation of the needs, including that functional evaluation, the purchasing and leasing or providing for the acquisition of the AT, selecting, designing, fitting, customizing, adapting, applying. There's a lot that goes into that one. And coordinating and using other therapies, intervention services, and such with those existing education and rehab plans and programs. So there's also the technical and training assistance that goes along with the service. There's also technical and training assistance for the professionals. So there's a lot that goes in to assistive technology service. And if you're an assistive technology specialist on this Zoom, you know what we're talking about. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper and kind of look at it in a different way. Traditionally, the AT continuum, when we think of it, people tend to focus on just categorizing the assistive technology tools, and those would fall into no and low, mid, and high tech tools. We really want to kind of broaden this continuum for everybody and show this expanded view. And it's a more comprehensive way that we can look at AT. So looking at the continuum, we can see that AT is not just the tools, but also includes the strategies and services that are tailored to individual student needs. And we'll just break it down a little bit. Shortly, we'll get into the strategies and services, but let's talk about those tools. Actually, you know what? We're going to talk about the strategies and services first, and then we'll dive into the tools a little bit. So the continuum illustrates scaffolded strategies, beginning with adult-directed approaches, where educators play a key role in teaching and modeling strategies, often paired with the assistive technology tool.
The chat for
Next is adult facilitated support, where direct instruction is reduced. And then the focus shifts towards helping students work more independently, which may include scaffolds. Finally, there's student-owned, where student agency is key, where we hope they get to the point where they know which strategies and tools and to use, how to use them, and what types of tasks to use them for, and in what environment. And then we get to the services and supports, those blue bubbles. Uh, Oftentimes, these include essential elements such as training, direct instruction, and consultation and collaboration. And unlike some of the other specialized services, assistive technology as a special education service can look different depending on the needs of the student, family, and IEP team. So this expanded continuum shows that the effectiveness of assistive technology lies not just in the tool itself, but also in how it's implemented and integrated into that student's learning journey. And so we feel like this expanded view really embraces a more holistic approach to thinking about AT. We'll look just a little bit closer at those tools, though. It's important to share that this diagram and information you're about to see is based on that traditional AT tool continuum. And as technology and accessibility continues to expand and become embedded into the devices and programs that are used by our students, these categories are getting a bit blurry, especially those differences between mid-tech and high-tech, because so much is built in now. But typically, low tech is readily available, inexpensive, typically not powered with batteries or electricity. It could be very simple things like pencil grips, page holders, adapted scissors, graphic organizers, post-it notes, that sort of thing. Easy to use, easy in a lot of classrooms, already available. Mid-tech is sometimes digital or electric, may require battery or power source. Things like talking calculators, audiobooks, built-in spell checkers, voice and output switches, things like of that nature. And this is where things get a little bit blurry, but some things we know are super high tech, like programs that have sophisticated features. These are often digital and computer based. They can be screen readers, speech to text, AAC devices, multi-feature tools. That being said, I'll make a note of those low-tech options, and even some of those mid-tech options are really, really great when we look at AT through a UDL lens, because these are options and tools and strategies that can be used with all students, really. Okay, we're going to shift into myths and facts and the legal stuff.
Here we go. When we are January 2024, the U.S. Department of Education published the myths and facts surrounding assistive technology devices and services, and it's available in English and Spanish online. I believe the link is in the home base document for you to go and see if you would like to at some point. But the document really aims to clarify the assistive technology requirements under IDEA and dispel some common misconceptions and provide examples of AT devices and services for children with disabilities. It also highlights the different requirements under Part C and B of IDEA. So the resources is really intended for a broad audience, including parents, early intervention providers, special and general educators, related service personnel, school administrators, technology specialists, and on and on and on, state and district employees. I personally have found these to be very positive and very helpful because there are 27 of them, and most of them I encounter most days. So, or at least each year. So basically I'm going to go through, and I chose to work on 7 myths out of the 27. So, but as we go through this, I'd really like you, if you don't feel comfortable putting a yes, a no, or a question mark in the chat, you can just make a mental note to yourself of the answer that you're thinking of whether this is a fact or, if it's true or not true, or however you want to think about that. Um, but I really do feel like these seven are really important to talk about, and I'm going to give a couple examples from my experience as we go through them. So here we go. Myth number one is AT should only be considered at some individual education program, IEP meetings. So that is myth number one. So absolutely. So in the chat, you put myth or fact is, oh, you guys are doing great. Amazing. Thank you so much for participating and really appreciate it. So the fact is that each time an IEP develops, reviews, or revises a child's IEP, team must consider whether the child requires AT devices or in services. So truly, the truth is that IEP teams often overlook the need for assistive technology, and frequently they assume it's not necessary. I find sometimes this is just due to lack of knowledge about AT, but it usually, when you narrowly define assistive technology because it has the word technology in it as only technology, you don't have a broader view of what AT could be. So it's important to remember that AT can encompass a wide range of solutions, not just high tech. So if a student is struggling on a goal, AT may be beneficial. And it could be as easy as a pencil grip or visual schedule. It could be a text reader, a graphic organizer, a communication board. But just expanding that team's understanding of what qualifies as assistive technology, like Jill was talking about with low, mid, and high tech, can really help students receive the support they need and then hopefully meet their goals and feel successful. All right, here we go again. Those thumbs up or thumbs down. Myth number four, an AT evaluation must be conducted prior to providing an AT device and service to a child with a disability. Let's see what we got here. The fact is that an AT evaluation can be included as an AT service for a child, but it is not required under IDEA. So personally, in my district, we've long operated under this expert model for the AT specialist role. And we are now in the process of changing thanks to this wonderful open access, because most of the time an AT evaluation really isn't necessary to determine which tools students need to meet their goals. So the IEP team at the school site works with the student daily and usually knows them really well. So if you have a team conversation about and brainstorm ideas and trial different things, it actually, in my experience, you end up coming up with really great ideas because it's the team that knows the student so well. Most expert districts, the AT specialist doesn't work at the individual site. Specifically, they're itinerant. Reducing the number of evaluations can also increase that consultative support that we can give to build capacity within the schools, which is another reason I'm really loving the fact that we do not have many AT assessments being done anymore. Just trying to really empower the teams to go through that process and have the confidence in being able to make those decisions. I will say that if the student has AT because of a visual impairment, deaf, hard of hearing, or orthopedic impairment, a lot of times due to funding, an AT evaluation might need to be written to be able to access the low incidence funding. But really loving working towards that more collaborative, proactive approach. And I believe our teams on our sites in San Jose have been really happy with the shifts we've made. Those thumbs up and thumbs down, myth or not myth. Here we go again. Myth number 8. AT cannot be used for participation in state academic assessments. Let's see where you guys are at on this. Yeah, thumbs down. Okay. Yep. Cannot be used. For those of you If you're thinking in your head or, not, the fact is that Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA, requires states to provide the appropriate accommodations, which include the use of AT devices for students with disabilities as part of their state assessments. Super, super important, very, very important that students are allowed to use their AT during state assessments, and I will add district assessments as well. So the myth for me is really important to address because it directly impacts how that student is going to demonstrate their abilities in formal assessments. If you have a student who's allowed to use the tools and strategies in the classroom, denying them access to it during a test would be, like asking a person who wears glasses to take them off during an exam, or it's just a barrier that we create for that student that then will not be able to perform their best. Another example would be a student who's dyslexic and being tested on reading comprehension. And we want their comprehension skills tested, but not their decoding skills. So if the student benefits from a text reader to perform to their potential, they really should have access to the accommodation on their state and district level assessments. I will also say that state tests include accessibility guides that are available online. The SAT does as well. And, all of these ensure that the use of AT does not affect the validity of the student's score. And I believe that was dropped into, yeah, there it is. So I'm really, I feel very passionately about this. So yes, let's go. Okay, so we are going on to myth number 10. AT devices and services should only be considered for children with certain disabilities. How are you all feeling about this? I know I've been talking for a while. Myth. All right. All right. Down, down, thumbs down. All right. Loving the group we have today. You're all on the same wavelength. So this myth, AT must be considered for all children with IEPs and can play an important role in the provision of FAPE. Regardless of the type of disability, AT has been proven to be effective for children with a variety of disabilities. So this is sort of like, the other myth that we talked about, but it's just, there's a misconception that, for the disabilities that we can't really see, learning disabilities, maybe ADHD, speech and language disorders, it's really just important to consider all of the AT possible, because every student's unique and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. But just thinking about if they're not meeting their goals, trying to think about what else we could bring in to help them. All right, 3 myths left to go. We're on to myth 15. So using AT devices and services will not improve child outcomes. How are you all feeling about this one today? So yeah, research demonstrates it is a fact that the use of AT devices and services improves child outcomes in all settings. If a student, and we know this, we've talked, I feel in some ways I'm repeating myself on some of these myths, but it's super important. When you have speech, a student with dyslexia who struggles with reading and writing, the text-to-speech software helps them access their grade level material, and speech-to-text tools can help with them with writing. But I would really wonder what you all thought about math word problems. And this is something that I think we forget about sometimes, is that math word problems is also decoding. And about a year ago, I was in an IEP meeting where the team said the student had not met her math goals. And I was really surprised because I had worked with her and she was doing what I thought was very well. But she scored 0 out of 5 on her word problems, her goal updates. So I asked if the word problems had been read aloud to the student because she's dyslexic. And the goal stated that the text reader should be used, but the teacher responded that they wanted to see how the student would do without the text reader. So I challenged the teacher and I asked, like, why didn't you try both approaches? And the teacher didn't really have an answer. So I requested the team reassess the goal by reading the word problems aloud. And lo and behold, the teacher reported that the student scored 5 out of 5 when the word problems were read aloud. So, if you look at a student who's scoring 0 out of 5, you're going to assume that that student is not able to do math, but the truth is that they just couldn't decode the words and comprehend it, fully capable of solving math problems. So that student doesn't really need a math goal per se. They need to be able to use a text reader for math. But it also improves their confidence and their independence and enables the students to engage fully in their learning from the classroom to the home. Alrighty, myth number 20. All AT devices must be approved by an LEA's Information Technology Department. Ours is called TDS, Technology Department. All of you have your own. How do you feel about this? Look at all of you. Myth, myth, myth. Boo, I agree. The IEP team makes the determination on what AT devices and services is necessary to meet the child's needs, as all of you guessed. The only thing I'll add is that sometimes it's incredibly important to tell teams or tell the IT department what IEPs are and 504s and help them understand. Myth 27 is AT is expensive? I'm curious. The fact of the matter is that some is expensive, but there's a lot that are not. So as most of you know, AT is now built into a lot of technology already, and the new curriculum that we're getting has digital versions with built-in accessibility tools. We also have the low tech that is not very expensive that's already in our schools. So there are a lot of ways to get around the expensive piece. And in my experience, the most expensive are the low incidence disabilities. All right. The next piece, I'm not going to go fully into this. I'm just going to make sure you all are aware of it. Ed Code, this came out in a couple years ago, and basically it's now part of Ed Code. So we are required to provide the school purchase assistive technology for home or other settings. And we need to ensure that an individual with exceptional needs continues to receive access to their technology or comparable one, even if they transfer to another local agency. This can be a little complicated, but responsibility continues for us to release the device for up to 60 days or 2 months. And it also includes charter schools. So there are some complications with this. I very much agree with this in the terms of I've received many students who have technology on their IEPs and I don't have the tech available. So we have to wait a long time to get it. But the teams work together and figure out a way to get the tech back. All right. Let's shift now to documenting AT in the IEP and making sure that, we can support teams in documenting important support for our students. There are a lot of places that we need to put it into the IEP. But when it's not recorded, you really have some challenges. And a lot of times what happens is it falls off the IEP, and therefore we're really struggling to understand what it is that the student needs to do. So we really want it in goals, instructional accommodations, special factors, the statewide assessments, in the notes. And when it's done consistently throughout the IEP, if another person picks up the IEP or they go to a different school, a different district, it's much easier to move forward with that. So there are a lot of resources that open access has, and they offer the first is the quick guide, which walks you through key considerations as you begin the documentation process. Highly recommend this. It provides examples of language that can be used to describe the rationale for the team's decision. Then we have special factors, where we've all seen the question, does the student require assistive technology? And we really truly need to answer this question. In Cyrus, you're not able to put why you say no, but you can put it in the notes page. Um, I'm not sure what SACE does, or other places. The quick guide is also going to offer you guidance on when to document AT in additional areas of the IEP, such as accommodations page, present levels, statewide assessments, goals, and transitions. But there are resources on the Open Access website under AT resources page. And now Jill's going to talk about AT consideration.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so AT consideration, it's an interesting term, right? And when we talk to a lot of teams out there, sometimes the term itself is confusing and teams aren't quite sure what it means. Does that mean we think about it? Does that mean we do an assessment? So not only do teams get confused about what that means, but they often don't know what is required or what is best practice when it comes to considering AT for their students. We know that IDEA tells teams they need to consider AT at every IEP. So we pose the question, how do they do it? How do they do it? How do they do it well? We're going to dive in a little bit deeper, and we'll share some resources that can help teams with talking about it and considering AT for their students. So let's dive in a little bit to defining AT consideration. So remember, like Jessica mentioned, it's the IEP team's responsibility to consider AT. It does not require an AT specialist or an assessment, although sometimes we do bring them in. For some of those students with more extensive or complex needs or low incidence disabilities. But for a large portion of our students who have those high incidence disabilities, we often find that teams can consider AT and meet those needs. So in that typical expert-driven model, teams rely on that assessment, but what we're hoping to shift to is that more capacity building, where teams really take ownership of that and are empowered. So one of the big questions that comes up is, when does it happen? It can happen during the IEP, but there's a lot that can happen before, during, and after. Sometimes it's helpful to begin the process before the meeting as part of the IEP development process, or even if a triennial is coming up, when you're really thinking about present levels and goals. You can gather some of these answers and even identify strategies and tools, and potentially even do a trial if you have some information, and you can share that at the IEP. That's a great thing to do. If it's just a simple case, for instance, if the student doesn't have a lot of needs, or or the team already really knows what's needed and what's already working for the student, you can quickly go through that conversation and that discussion and document the recommendations in the IEP meeting. Like Jessica mentioned, just be sure to include that rationale, whether you say yes or no. Sometimes you might be in an IEP meeting, though, and through conversations, the team sees that there are some unmet needs that might benefit from AT, and they may decide that they might need to do a little problem solving, explore some more options, maybe even consult with an AT specialist and come back to the table. Thinking about AT for students can really be an ongoing consideration, because we're always noticing what tools are working, are not working for the student when they're struggling. So we're always kind of thinking about AT and what we can do. One thing to know is that there really is a difference between AT consideration and AT assessment. An assessment requires that signed assessment plan, along with an AT specialist who has a variety of it could be an occupational therapist too. There are other people that do AT assessments. But the AT specialist typically uses a variety of non-standardized functional assessments, and they are often done again when needs are more complex or when the IEP teams do not have enough collective knowledge or skill in order to make decisions about assistive technology. So we are going to, let's see, move forward, and I want to make mention of the quiet indicators. These are the indicators that give quality indicators for assistive technology. They give AT teams and professionals and IEP teams guidance for interpreting laws surrounding AT. It's a wonderful organization. They provide us with these research-based indicators. And so we've added the Quiet website link to that home-based document for you. AT efforts at all stages involves ongoing collaborative work by teams, which includes family caregivers, school personnel, and others needed individuals and service agencies. Two of the indicators are these. We'll start with this one. During the development of an individualized education program, every IEP team consistently uses a collaborative decision-making process that supports systematic consideration of each student's possible need for AT devices and services. So we're going to go ahead and launch a poll. I'm going to put the second one up here too, and then you can answer these poll questions because we want to know how your teams are doing or what you're seeing out there in the field. The second one is that the IEP team members have a collective knowledge and skills needed to make informed AT decisions, and that they know when to seek assistance when needed. So a poll is going to be launched. Let me go ahead and launch this poll. And this is anonymous. Just go ahead and let us know how you're kind of rating what you're seeing out there. Okay, so we've got for the first question, in terms of IEP teams using a consistent team-based approach to considering AT, we've got about 9 out of 34 saying most of the time. That's great. We've got 16 saying about 47% saying some of the time, and then we've got that 26% saying hardly ever. And then in terms of collective knowledge and feeling comfortable considering AT and recommending AT. So we have about 12% say they see strong skills and knowledge out there. Most see that some training could be taking place. And then we're also seeing about 30% that don't feel comfortable or confident discussing AT. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing those results, but those sound pretty consistent with what we see out there as well. Thanks for participating in that. So moving right along, because we are going to run out of time, we want to just dive deep into AT consideration and some implementation tools and give you some resources that you can utilize. So 3 possible outcomes of AT consideration. 1, the team decides that the student has all the tools required and we can just document and move on. 2, they may indeed benefit from some AT and we feel comfortable making some recommendations. So we're going to, again, try some things, document, move on. And then the third one is that teams feel that they have a lack of information or skill. So that's really during that AT consideration conversation, one of these things typically happens. We just want to mention briefly the SET framework. This is the standard in terms of AT consideration. It's been around for many years. It's from Joy Zabala. And I'm not going to go into the details of all these, but basically this is the gold standard. The materials that we have at Open Access for AT consideration are based on the SET process and the framework. We will always want to think about the student first, about the whole student, what their strengths are and abilities and what barriers they're experiencing. E is for environments. We want to think about the setup, not only of the physical space, but the materials, the equipment. We want to dive deep into tasks because AT is really tied to the tasks that are being done. And it's not just the productivity tasks like, writing or reading. It's also consuming information as well. How are students accessing everything, and what types of at what point in those activities or tasks are they facing a barrier? And lastly, we think about the tools. And we've talked about the tools, and this conversation, this is the basic assistive technology consideration conversation right here. We're going to talk about the student, the environment, the tasks, and the tools. So diving in a little deeper into it, we have some great resources for you. We have developed the AT consideration guide. It's the full guide. It has a lot of information about AT consideration. It includes all the forms and all the quick guides that we're also going to show you. So it's kind of a one-stop shop there in the guide. We also, as part of the guide, there is the quick guide. Bring that up briefly. And so this is a great thing to just print out, have on hand, share with teams. And this really has some important prompts through each of those categories that follows along with the set. And so it really helps conversations. Sometimes we forget to talk about things. So this is a great thing to have on hand. Along with that, there's a worksheet. So it's always good to document. So if you're having that conversation, you might as well write it down so that you can remember what you talked about. And part of the worksheet includes an action plan, because oftentimes after you've made some sort of decision, there are different steps that need to happen afterwards. And it's great to have accountability. Parents really, really like this. And teams do too, because it reminds them what they need to do. So that, in conjunction with that quick guide, is really helpful. The last thing we want to show you, if you're wanting to get ideas for tools and strategies, is we can go to the Open Access Flip Kit. And I'm on the Open Access site right now. And if I head over to Accessible Technology tab, this is all the Access and AT information. And I go to that AT Resource Flip Kit. This is where you can sort by area of need and get some ideas for some assistive technology that might be beneficial. So you can choose any one of the areas of need. And we even have some things in there for accessible educational materials and built-in products or built-in features. But you can just go ahead and click one, and you can fine-tune your search if you want, and it will pop up resources for you to take a look at. Next, we're going to talk briefly about implementation. Jessica.
I just want to piggyback off of what Jill said. The open access website and all of the tools that they have available have been incredibly helpful for my teams. And I'm super grateful that all of you created all of it, because it's helped us a lot. I would say probably the most difficult thing about assistive technology is implementation. Picking the tool, figuring it out, all of that has some difficulty, but the challenging aspects of using it throughout the day with a student who encounters a variety of assignments through the day. Every day looks a little bit different, and helping the teacher and any other staff and the student understand when it's beneficial to pull it out, when it's beneficial to use it, how will it be used best. It can be really hard. And I think that if the implementation doesn't happen is when we really see a lot of abandonment of assistive technology, just most of the time because it was just hard to figure out how to implement it. So there are tools that are available to help that you can find on the website. And it's the quiet indicators provide valuable insights on best practices for these processes. And the forms that you'll be seeing are from open access. They've been designed to include all those essential elements and best practices to help teams go through the trial and implementation process. So this is the quick guide. The implementation and quick guide just outlines key elements teams should consider. Then we have the trial worksheet, which can be used alongside the quick guide, and you can record essential information about the trial. This is very helpful when you're going to do the final implementation part. And then there's an implementation section of the quick guide located on the right side. And, it follows a similar format. So it encourages the teams really to collaborate on a solid plan and to provide multiple opportunities for the student to use the AT. And then we have the implementation snapshot worksheet that aligns with the quick guide and offers space for documenting all of the essential best practices and elements for implementation. So, all of this is super helpful. And I find when you have not filled these out is when things tend to go south because there isn't a clear plan.
Alrighty, thanks. Thanks, Jessica. We're going to move forward with just two more resources for you. We've got just a few minutes left. We want to share with you the document called My AT Backpack. We haven't talked too much about UDL, Universal Design for Learning. We've mentioned it a little bit, but there is a link on the home base if that's a new term for you. But the goal of UDL is learner agency. And what does that look like when we're talking about students who use AT? So we want to make sure that our students understand what they've got. It allows this form can help support them take ownership of their learning process, really support their independence with their AT. They can put down the specific tools, the tasks that require that specific feature or tool. They're prompted to list the product names and features and make note of who to contact for assistance. And there's also a place to reflect on their own level of independence using the tool. This is great for teachers and parents. They can help, their student or child fill this out. Could be kept in a binder, or they could have a digital version of it. So this proactive approach really fosters that independence and self-advocacy. But it also really helps our students have that deeper understanding on how to leverage their technology effectively, because it's probably likely it's going to be with them for a long time on their educational journey. The other tool that we wanted to share is the end of the year AT checklist. This is also available on the website. I've been in many IEP meetings for new students or students who are moving from elementary to middle to high. And the student has AT listed on their IEP, but the receiving team isn't familiar with it. They realizes they may need to make a purchase or work with IT to get software or apps installed. And this can be a difficult time for students who rely on their AT and don't have access to it. Jessica told us earlier about that recent law in California where teams need to do a better job at making sure students have access to their AT during those times of transition. But still, a lot of teams aren't aware of it, or they fail to plan ahead for it. And so this can be really helpful if you kind of build this into your process, is the checklist can really support that successful transition of AT for that new team or teacher. And it can really be a time for the teacher or the team to reflect on how effective the AT was, or if there's any suggestions they have for the receiving team, and handle any maintenance that needs to be happening. And also prompts the team to think about what the student needs during the summer break. With that, I think we are coming to the very end. That hour went very quickly. And we've got about 1 minute left. Not a whole lot of time for questions and answers, but hopefully within the within the chat. If you had questions, you got some of those answered. And go ahead and put them in the chat. Absolutely. What we'd like to do as we finish up, because we've given you a lot of information in this short hour. Sometimes that can be overwhelming if this is all new to you. But we encourage you to take a deep breath and just think about these 3 questions. What is one thing that you're excited about that you learned today? Maybe one thing that you want to learn more about? And is there one thing that you can do to improve considering AT for your students or child? And with that, we want to mention that this is an ongoing inclusive learning circle. We have a number of dates coming up. We would love your feedback on today's webinar. So there's a link there. You can either do the QR code with your phone, or you can click on the link in the chat. And we'd love to hear your feedback. Some dates coming up. Those are right there. Feel free to share the registration link with your colleagues. We'd love more people to join us. And we really appreciate you being here today. We would love for you to follow us on socials. But with that, I really love to thank our guest speaker, Jessica Rosenberg, for her time and expertise and for being just an all-around awesome human being. So glad she was here today with us. I believe everything is better when we do things together. And so we'd also like to thank everybody for showing up and attending today. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.